This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
National Championship Game tonight. Very much looking forward to it. The Miami Hurricanes taking on the Indiana Hoosiers. I suspect that this point spread's a little too high in favor of Indiana, but they seem to be a wagon. Let's find out. Let's get some eyes, ears on the ground. We head out to South Beach. Welcome in our very own Stormy Buonantony, who is sitting in the teal seats out there. What's going on? How you feeling? What's the weather like? Fancy vest and everything, huh?
Yeah, good. They're giving me swag, which is always nice. This is kind of the calm before the storm a little bit. And forgive me already for my shoddy camera work. It's been a while since I've had to one-man band something, and you do all the technical stuff for us at work. But you've got all the local media doing some of their pregame hits over there on the field. It's quiet now, but it's going to be very loud soon. And the tailgating has been going since like hours before we even arrived, and we get here super early. So really looking forward to what's going to be a battle here for the Natty.
All right, so let's talk about the line first. This yesterday got cut down, Stormy. Went from 8.5 to 7.5 pretty quickly, so there was some sort of support for the Miami Hurricanes. What do you make of where this number is at, and do you think that what do you think the side is? What do you think of this big number here, given the dominance of the Hoosiers?
Sure. And I've said this to you before. At first blush, when you looked at the spread, whether it was 7.5 or even bet out to 8.5, it felt too big with the D-line and trench play Miami has, playing at home. You think about what we've seen Miami be able to do the last few weeks, too. They take it to Ohio State. You want to judge Carson Beck for not being able to step up and elevate his game in a big moment. Well, please see the end of the game against Ole Miss. That said, you and I have discussed it a lot on the show, that maybe Indiana's just that good, right? Maybe they're just that dominant. They've been operating at a different level, it feels like. And you've done such a great job making the UConn comp a couple of years ago and what they did in the NCAA tournament. I think the LSU run from 2019 comes to mind for a lot of people as a team the market just never really seemed to catch up on. And that's kind of the side that I lean on. They don't make mistakes. They never beat themselves. Are they as talented as Miami? No. But I think they're the better team. They're so well coached, and on this stage, I think that matters, especially after you look at Miami just a week and a half ago, double-digit penalties in the Fiesta Bowl. And also, I don't know how much of the media day and different media availability stuff you've listened to, but Curt Cignetti acknowledging that over the past couple days, maybe some of his players were getting a little sentimental and having the warm fuzzies. And he's like, okay, time to snap out of it. That's enough. Time to dial up the aggression. And I love that mentality from Curt Cignetti. I think it's the right mentality to have. So I didn't ultimately come away picking on this game where I felt like, because you can talk yourself into either side of this thing, I think, pretty easily. But my heart tells me Indiana could just really potentially go scorched earth.
I believe one of the quotes was, "You don't go to war with warm milk and cookies," was one of the things that Curt Cignetti had said. Absolutely tremendous. Stormy Buonantony with us out there in Miami, taking in the scene. You did mention, you and I were talking about this. You got to talk to Cignetti, right? How'd that go?
Yeah, it was good. And for my job, because I help host the media day on Saturday, so I talked to both head coaches briefly and a couple of players as a part of it. And Cignetti said to me, because I just asked him about how this has been something that Indiana fans felt like for years was an impossible place to be in the national championship, and just asking what about this team and this group was so special to get here, players and coaching staff together. And he really credited the way they play together and the way they work together and how they're not afraid of anything and they're not afraid of a fight. They want to fight. And I've bought into that messaging, GVT. I really have.
All right, Stormy Buonantony with us. Other angles to approach for this game. I think you were looking at some quarters stuff and some other angles to approach betting in a unique game like this.
Yeah, I really do like the under 47.5. And I think the first half under 23.5 and the second quarter under 13.5 were a couple different angles. And I look at what Indiana has done offensively. Yes, the last couple of games, you hang 38 on Alabama, 56 or whatever it was on Oregon. I just don't see that happening against this Miami defense. They really pride themselves on disruption. They're a lot healthier coming into this game than I at least initially expected coming out of the semifinal. And Indiana's a really good defensive team as well. They're stout against the run. They're a really clean tackling team, coverage, takeaways. Do I think this is going to be an Indiana-Ohio State type of a 13-10 game? No, the Hoosiers will still get theirs, but just not at the same rate that we've seen in the playoffs so far. Fernando Mendoza has not seen pressure like Miami can bring, really. And even in a game where we saw Miami struggle to an extent defensively against Ole Miss, and I know they had guys dropping like flies in that game, they still had 17 pressures and forced more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws. Specifically with the first half, second quarter angle, Miami is pretty slow starting offensively, but they're number one overall in first half defense compared to, and I thought this was interesting, ranking 62nd in FBS and 73rd at home in the fourth quarter defensively. Indiana, meanwhile, is a really good second half kind of like adjustment team offensively. So I could see Miami's defense being a little more stout early and then faltering late. And last note, and sorry I'm rambling, for whatever reason, Indiana's defense has been awesome in the second quarter. Top 3 in opponent's second quarter scoring allowed with better numbers. Interesting from home.
Stormy Buonantony with us. All right, before we move on, I think you retweeted this, but environment-wise, I think you were texting with me and Justin, our producer, during the Indiana-Oregon game and noting the environment there. Do you think you're going to get the same dynamic fan-wise? Is there a big Miami contingent? They are at home. What do you think this dynamic's going to look like in the stadium?
I'm very curious to see ultimately what the turnout is here. It's not going to be like the, 90-10% difference that we saw previously. But I do think Indiana's going to have the edge here. This is such a once in a lifetime opportunity. It feels like for their fans, never thought that they would be in this position, yet they are. So if you have the financial backing to be able to come to this game, you're coming to it. But for Miami too, they haven't been in this game for more like a quarter century. They're very excited to have the game here. It's easy travel. So on the streets, I've seen more Indiana fans over the course of the weekend, but I think that's because they're out and about. Meanwhile, Miami fans are mostly at home. So I could see maybe a 60-40 or like a 58 type of a percentage shift in favor of Indiana. I don't know. But I do think regardless, whichever side has the ball, third downs are going to be pretty tough and loud.
All right, let's get your thoughts on the NFL before we get you out of here. Your San Francisco 49ers absolutely dog-walked by the Seattle Seahawks over the weekend. Rams get by my Chicago Bears. You're welcome. This is a matchup for you. This is a Stormy Buonantony type game. This is your division. What do you expect?
My gut tells me it's a close one, so I like taking the dog in what you anticipate being a close game. Thanks for bringing up the 49ers of it all. I don't think Seattle is truly as good and as dominant as they looked in that game in particular. I think the Rams would also be a great teaser leg, and I know we were kind of texting, especially given the Miami positions that we have for the national championship. Maybe bring Indiana down in a teaser and pair that with one of these dogs in the NFL, but I lean the Rams side of this thing. I think their offense against Seattle's defense is going to be a really good back and forth. And we've seen 2 super close games in the regular season meetings, right? Game 1 was decided by 2 points. Game 2, Seattle's down 16 and comes all the way back and rallies to ultimately win in OT. I think we get another close game. I like taking the points, but absolutely using the Rams as a teaser angle.
All right, before we get you out of here, any thoughts at all on the AFC Championship game, or are you not really looking at that one yet?
Well, I'm sure that you are like, oh, is there any difference even without Bo Nix in this game? Because I know you don't like him anyway, so I can just read you like a book. So I'm assuming, though, that you're taking the dog because you think it's adjusted too much?
I think we've spent too much time together. And, yes, that's exactly what I was talking about.
Okay, yeah, that checks. I don't blame you, but that's another one. I think we were You initially, when I said Rams, you said Broncos as a teaser leg. And I think that could be, I know it's untraditional, but another one, just getting that up to double digits against the Patriots is probably the way I'm going to play it. Our audience, I bet, is not surprised given how many teasers I played this year.
Yeah, I mean, I figured that would be right up your alley. And I do think we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit, but I do think the teasing Indiana down might be a unique way to try to hedge off this Miami ticket. But we will see if that is the case here. All right, Stormy, you got work to do, so we'll cut you a little bit early, but appreciate you making some time. And I don't know, is it good luck on the call? What do we call what you're doing here today?
I think it's just like, don't embarrass myself in front of 70,000 people. That's really all it comes down to.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't do that. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yep. Stormy Buonantony again out there. She'll be working in arena this time around, not on the sidelines for the national championship game. Read me like a book there with the Denver Broncos. It's not that I think that Bo Nix is not good. I mean, he might not be good, but it's the difference here between the two. I feel somewhat embarrassed that I was easily read like that. In fairness, I did text her earlier. Justin, you are a witness to this, about my thoughts potentially on this game. And that does speak to, as we were discussing, so I have Miami at 16-1 to win the national championship game, as does Stormy, and kind of brainstorming different ways to get maybe something out of this ticket. Might be a little difficult given the fact that, you're talking about $3 favorite on the other side right now. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to maybe include Indiana on a teaser if you want to get that down and then tease up through these key numbers, especially if you're like the Rams. Again, you need another outlet, so that's probably the tough part. Again, it's not like really a true hedge, but given the situation, it's hard to find an exact out here outside of watching the game and hoping that Miami maybe comes out with an opening drive and can lead, and then maybe you can find an opportunity somewhere in that game to get a better price on the Indiana Hoosiers to win it if you want a piece of that. Speaking of pieces, I'm somewhat hungry and I am tonight going to go get some chicken wings. I have been looking forward to it. I think this is the power of the advertising. For some reason, I've been wanting chicken wings, and I think this is why. Because Omaha Steaks is offering a great deal, 50% off site-wide, and 2 pounds of fully cooked chicken wings for free with your $129 order. That's right. You spend $129, you can score 2 pounds of fully cooked wings, 50% off site-wide. omahasteaks.com/VSIN. Don't wait. Get those 2 pounds of wings and save 50% off site-wide. Go to omahasteaks.com. That's omahasteaks.com/VSIN. Minimum purchase required. See site for details. We continue on getting a lot of different perspectives on what's going to happen coming up in 15 minutes. We'll talk with Corbin Smith about those dominant Seahawks, but on the other side, we have a full slate in the NBA because it is MLK Day. We'll talk about the games that are underway, some news, and what the schedule has for us a little bit later. So you're listening to this podcast because you want an edge. But what if I told you you're only halfway there? You've got the mindset. Now it's time to get the toolkit to match. Here's the thing. Pro bettors spend thousands on data and tools. But what they don't want you to know is that you can get the same edge for a fraction of the cost with VSiN Pro. VSiN Pro gives you access to expert picks, public betting data, prop projections, powerful tools, analytics, and more. Just tap the link in the description and see why thousands of bettors are already using VSiN Pro to cash more bets.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Got a couple of games underway in the NBA. I would say headliner between two teams that may meet in the NBA Finals. The Oklahoma City Thunder taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road. Thunder right now up 35-27 after a Lou Dort made three there. Gives them that lead with 10:58 left to go in the second. Thunder closed as 6-point favorites here on the road against Cleveland. Total at 230. Injury news in this one. It's a lengthy injury report for Cleveland. Darius Garland's not playing out here. But for the Thunder, Jalen Williams did not play today, diagnosed with a hamstring strain. This is going to be a pretty fascinating stretch for Oklahoma City as we move forward here. First off, the offense has not really been the same for about a month now. Over the last 18 games, the Thunder 11-7 straight up, 7-11 against the spread. Offense, middle of the pack, 116.1 points per 100 possessions in non-garbage time over that stretch. It's about 13th in the NBA, and they have failed to cover by about 5.2 points per game. So Interesting matchup here, kind of right on pace with where you should be in game-wise as well. We'll keep our eye on this and the other one as Milwaukee is on the road against Atlanta. At one point, it looked like the Hawks were maybe going to claw their way back into this. They're not out of it by any stretch, but it is getting late early. 5:05 left to go in the fourth, 94-87. Milwaukee currently leads right now. Leading scorer for the Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, currently sitting with 17 points, one of 5 Milwaukee Bucks in double figures so far. Let's hit a little bit of news in the association with a game that actually just got started right now. The Los Angeles Clippers just tipped off against the Washington Wizards. Early 9-6 lead with 8.5 minutes left to go. Clippers have been on one for a while now. They entered this thing with 5 consecutive wins and victories in 6 out of 7. You expand that out even further. Talk about a team that has won, I believe, 11 of 13 games as they take on Washington here. But we did get some bad news for L.A., and this has always been the deal with the Clippers. We talked about this about last week, added them at just over 2-1 to make the playoffs. Still think they can do it, but Kawhi Leonard, they're in the midst of this road trip right now. They were in Toronto the other day. They're in D.C. today. They will round it out with a Chicago game on Tuesday. But Kawhi Leonard had to go back home because he is suffering a knee injury that is going to cause him to miss some time. And that is the worrisome part about what this has been. Leonard's been playing incredible basketball on this stretch of games, scoring over 30 points with regularity, but the knee's finally caught up to him. So we'll see how much time he actually misses, but never good when a guy has to leave a road trip to go back and get his knee or anything taken care of at this point right now. We'll keep an eye on this. I still think they're going to be in a position to, at the very least, make the playoffs, even if Kawhi does miss time. We knew that they were a better team than they were given credit for. Right now, just behind Memphis due to tiebreakers for the 10th seed in the Western Conference, and probably just going to be the 10th or 9th seed. Pretty big gap between them and the 8th seeded Golden State Warriors, who will play later tonight. A 5-game difference there between those two. So let's hit on some of the games that are going to start. Let's go to 2 p.m. Pacific time. Dallas Mavericks on the road against the New York Knicks. Knicks a 10.5-point favorite right now. Total, depending on where you look, sits anywhere from 229.5 to 230.5. The injury report is going to be key here for both teams. For Dallas, it's already pretty lengthy with nobody of note that might come down and save the day. But for the New York Knicks, the question will be whether or not you're going to get Jalen Brunson out on the floor. He's currently questionable, as is Josh Hart, to play in this game. For the Mavericks, we know that Anthony Davis isn't playing. Cooper Flagg is out as well. All of the big guys have been injured. Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, Ryan Nembhard is going to give this thing a go. He's out there, popped up on the injury report as well. But P.J. Washington will not play. Neither will D'Angelo Russell. So absolutely nobody essentially available for the Dallas Mavericks, given this big point spread, even with the questionable status of Jalen Brunson. This seems like, if you like to build moneyline parlays, a pretty strong leg at minus 440 would be somewhat surprising given the lack of talent on the floor for Dallas and all of the injuries that they're going to be in a position to upend New York. But we'll see if Jalen Brunson can get back out there on the floor for the Knicks in this game. Utah and San Antonio. These two are going to be pretty quick because these are double-digit spreads. Do have some thoughts coming up in a second here, but just worth noting, San Antonio, 16.5-point spread in favor of the Spurs. Totals 240.5 or 241. Don't think that NBA teams will be caught looking ahead to potential opponents, but it is worth noting that the Spurs do have Houston coming up tomorrow. Maybe that matters a little bit more than taking on the Utah Jazz. Isaiah Collier is questionable. Lauri Markkanen is not going to play, and Bryce Sensabaugh is questionable. And those two, Collier and Sensabaugh, actually all three, pretty notable for Utah. We know what Markkanen is for this team. Sensabaugh has been on a massive scoring run, and Isaiah Collier coming off the bench helping with some of those guard duties is going to be a little bit of an absence too for Utah if he cannot go. Devin Vassell remains out for the Spurs here. Again, no real move. 16.5 the open, 240.5 the opening total, and we're still sitting there. Indiana and Philly, we have seen a little bit of line move in favor of the Pacers, and it has to do with the injury report here for the 76ers. We'll hit this. Joel Embiid, questionable, as is Paul George. Jared McCain, doubtful, and Kelly Oubre, he will be available today for the 76ers. We're down to 6 now, or 6.5, with that total down to 227.5. We'll see if whether or not you're going to get the big guys out there for the Philadelphia 76ers. As the most recent report, still questionable for both of them. Remember, we're updating these injury reports every single time out. But even if they play or they don't, we know how good these 76ers teams have been, especially with Tyrese Maxey leading the way. They become a little bit more up-tempo. They really rely on these guards. And given where Indiana is at right now, I think that this should be a matchup. And I think Zach Cohen was covering this on Harvard Handicappers as well. Talk about, again, building moneyline parlays if you like to do those sort of things. 76ers there, even with the absences potentially of Embiid and George, feel like a pretty safe option to add on to those. And as we know, too, for those who haven't been keeping track of these injury reports either, Benedict Mathurin has not been playing for the Indiana Pacers out today. Interesting matchup here, Phoenix and Brooklyn. Phoenix, a 9-point favorite on the road against the Brooklyn Nets. Totals 215.5. Injury report for the Brooklyn Nets, pretty lengthy, but the name that is notable for them, not on the report, is that Michael Porter Jr. will be out there for the Brooklyn Nets. On the other side for Phoenix, Devin Booker, a questionable tonight, as they are sitting about 8.5-point favorites now with a total of 215.5. Seems like a big number, especially with the questionable status of Phoenix. Look, this is the try-hard team, a team that is going to give out there, give you every single bit of effort, play well defensively, and has enough shot creation to get it done. But Brooklyn has, as we know, improved on the defensive end, has been playing pretty well. With Michael Porter Jr. out there, a little bit more live than I think that they're given credit for. If we get this up to that 10-point margin, which I don't think is going to happen, you can get me to buy in here on Brooklyn, but we've already seen this move quite a bit. But 9's already populating across the board. Don't think it would be crazy to think that maybe a 10 starts to pop for the Brooklyn Nets. This one I do like, and we'll add this later in best bets and talk as well. But Boston and Detroit. Detroit 2.5 to a 3-point favorite. Total is 223.5. The 3 is the more predominant number. Injury report here for both teams, relatively clean outside of Peyton Pritchard being questionable for the Boston Celtics. Chris Boucher's questionable as well, so we'll see if Pritchard's going to be out there. But again, given what we know about both of these teams right now and just where they're rated, I think that we're undervaluing Detroit just a little bit here on their home floor. Boston has played well. They're one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, but defensively, they're very much middle of the pack. They don't force a ton of turnovers. Talking about being middle of the pack in that regard, they're bottom half of the league in terms of defensive turnover rate, so they're not going to grab a ton of extra possessions. They're also not a good rebounding team statistically, so you could be in a situation where you're giving up some second-chance opportunities. Ron Holland added to the injury report late due to an illness. But outside of that, the Pistons, who have been one of the best home teams and one of the better defensive home teams in the association, just asking them to win essentially a single possession game here, I think is a fair ask for Detroit. So I'll be sweating out the Pistons later today, lay 2.5 with them here. 223.5 the total. No real opinion there. The Celtics have been a wild team in terms of variance. We've seen it in terms of totals. We've seen it in terms of results. A couple of nights ago, they go out there, play Miami, can't hit a shot to save their lives, and all of a sudden Miami falls off a cliff. They start hitting shots in the fourth quarter, ended up winning and covering as 2-point dogs there. And speaking of Miami, last game of the day tonight is the Heat on the road against the Golden State Warriors. Lengthy injury report, but a lot of availability for the Miami Heat tonight. Hero will not play, but Jaime Jaquez is probable. Nikola Jovic, as well as Davion Mitchell, are available here and are going to play tonight. And for the Golden State Warriors, the only name of note on their report is Draymond Green. He is probable to play tonight. You see the number there, 5.5 with a total of 238.5 for the Golden State Warriors, a team that I have not had a read on at all throughout this entire season. And I think that's kind of been what they've been all season long, a team that hasn't been entirely consistent. They have covered 5 out of their last 6 games, and they have won those 6 contests as well, or 5 of those 6. But that, of course, was prior to that, I should say, they had failed to cover 4 straight and had been playing 500 basketball. This is a team that's kind of been all over the place. In Miami, we know how good they can be on defense. The pace is one thing, but if you look at the overall efficiency on a per-possession basis, one of the best defensive teams in the association, and they're healthy tonight. A little bit here toward 5.5. I know Golden State's in really good form. Just took out our Hornets, but outside of that, seems like a relatively large number. And really quickly, before we have the win-o-meter? Can we throw this up? Again, last night, the Charlotte Hornets get it done. We get one more win on the ledger after last night. Absolutely dump truck the Denver Nuggets, 110-87. We get 16 wins now, and we are cruising. The Hornets, telling you, man, to make the playoffs, I don't know about a division or maybe a finals or anything like that, but to make the playoffs, this team, I think, statistically is on par to get it done, and we will see if they can keep it going. ProfitX, #1 place for college basketball player props. They offer all players in all schools in every state. ProfitX is available. As we get closer to March Madness, take advantage of ProfitX's 20% purchase match. Download ProfitX now and experience the future of winning. Use promo code VSiN to get started.
Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
A quick update. The Hawks did make it somewhat dramatic, but with 36.1 seconds left to go, it's 109-105. Buried the lead when we updated this game earlier. Should be noted that the Hawks started 1 of 22 from beyond the arc in this game, and that ultimately could make a difference in a game you might lose by 4. So right now, with less than 40 seconds left to go, the Hawks are trying to keep themselves alive in this game at home against Milwaukee, and a 7-point game, 47-40, Oklahoma City up on top. Cason Wallace at the free throw line for the Thunder with 5:49 left to go. First one is good. Let's head out to the Progressive Guest Line. Welcome in Corbin Smith. Nice enough to give us some time here today. Seahawks beat reporter over at Sports Illustrated. Corbin, appreciate it very much. So our usual host here on the program that is with me, Stormy Buonantony, is a very big 49ers fan, so I had to mock her a little bit after what happened over the weekend. Were you surprised at the level of dominance the Seahawks put out there against their division foe on Saturday?
I was surprised at the level that they did. I thought Seattle would win this game fairly comfortably. I predicted 30-17 going into the game. I did not expect it to be a bend over and take the belt type game, which is what it turned into. I joked about it in the press box, but I almost felt like I had, the Globo Gym Purple Cobras off dodgeball playing in my head. Like Seattle's just like, well, we're Globo Gym. We're better than you, and we know it. That is kind of the sense that I got, really, that first quarter going up 17-0. And it's just like, from that point on, San Francisco just couldn't muster anything. So Seattle, that was as dominant of a win as I've seen this franchise have, right up there with the Super Bowl win over Denver all those years ago. Just all three phases clicking on all cylinders, and San Francisco had no fighting chance.
So it is good to be in the NFC Championship game. They're favored here against L.A., but there is some news and some bad news at that we should discuss here. So first off, for Seattle in that running back room, Zach Charbonnet, we get the news today. So this sounds like a serious injury, and he is going to be sidelined, correct?
Torn ACL, so he is out for not just the end of this season, but you're probably looking at least a quarter of the 2026 season that he's going to be out with the timing of this injury. It sounds like reconstructive knee surgery. So unfortunate blow, losing the team's top touchdown producer, 12 touchdowns this year for Zach Charbonnet, and what was a really fine third season, complimenting Ken Walker III.
So Ken Walker with 19 carries in that game. Safe to assume does he achieve workhorse status here? Is every touch going to be Kenneth Walker's as we move forward outside of some nice plays to Rashid Shaheed, who had 2 carries himself?
Yeah, I would think at this point of the season, anything that the Seahawks have done to hold back with Ken Walker III leading up to this point, hey, keep mentioning movies here, but it's like Dan Fouts and the Waterboy, last game of the season, not holding anything back now. They've got to be in that position, and it seemed like they were kind of leaning that way at the end of that game out of necessity on Saturday, letting him be the workhorse. George Holani's on injured reserve. Maybe he comes back this week now that they have that major need. A guy that's got 22 carries this year for the Seahawks and can give some of that downhill running style to offset Charbonnet being out. They've got Cam Akers and Velus Jones Jr. on the practice squad as well. So they have some bodies. It's just going to be the question of what's the best way to go about trying to make it that Ken Walker III isn't taking 100% of the snaps, and you have somebody that can offer a change of pace. They've got to figure out what that's going to be here in the next couple of days.
The other injury that we were all watching with bated breath on that game was, of course, Sam Darnold. He comes out, he has 17 attempts, 124 yards. Didn't really need to throw it considering the way that this game went. So can you kind of walk us through what exactly was this injury for Darnold? Do we think that this is something that's going to linger into the NFC Championship game for him?
Well, Darnold said this is going to be something that he's going to have to do maintenance on for the rest of the playoffs, but he also said that it really didn't bother him during the game. And based on my observations, as soon as he came out with the team, and he missed the entire pregame warm-ups. He was not out there with Drew Lock and Jalen Milroe. So, of course, everybody was on Darnold watch. Is he going to play? Is he not? And they did not deactivate him. He told reporters he was throwing passes in the locker room instead of coming out with the team during that pregame warm-up part. But He looked like he was feeling just fine, and at least he was healthy enough to be able to make all the throws he needed to. Not really any throws where you saw him grimacing or anything like that. So I think it's something to monitor just because oblique injuries can be something that can linger, but at the same time, Seattle didn't need him to do a lot in that game on Saturday, but when they did call on him, he completed 70% of his passes. He didn't have any turnovers. He played really efficient football, made some outstanding throws, including that touchdown to Jackson Smith and Jigba in the back of the end zone. It was a fantastic throw. So I don't think the Seahawks are overly concerned about this. They're going to do what they need to do maintenance-wise with him, but he should be good to go and be able to run the entire offense moving forward.
It's Corbin Smith with us, Sports Illustrated Seahawks writer. So let's zoom out on this offense really quickly. Heading into this game and heading into the postseason, the last month or so has been, at least statistically, a pretty disjointed effort from this Seahawks offense. What have you seen from it? Even against the 49ers, less than 300 total yards. Is this something they should be worried about as they head into a game against the Los Angeles Rams? What's been going on with this offense?
Well, I don't think anything's been wrong with the offense necessarily. They've had a lot of slow starts in the second half of the season. Teams have been taking away some of the deep balls that they were thriving with early in the year. But on the flip side, and Charbonnet being out is going to put a dent in this, but they're averaging over 165 rushing yards a game their last 4 games. So they've really found the balance that Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak wanted at the perfect time of year when you want to run the football in January. So I don't think they necessarily have any major concerns here. Charbonnet being out is a big hit, but they're hoping they can find a way to offset it in the way that Ken Walker III is running right now. They feel really confident in giving him the football, having him be the feature back. They've got the weapons on the outside. And Darnold, they feel like if he's got to make more throws than he did this last week, that they're more than confident that he can do that. So I don't think they're going into this game feeling lack of confidence offensively. Mm-hmm. The run game humming the way that it is, the weapons they have on the outside. They scored 38 points against the Rams only a few weeks ago. So I think they have plenty of confidence that they can put points up on the board against this team, this familiar foe, under the brightest of lights.
Yep, 6.6 yards per play in that win in overtime over the Los Angeles Rams as well. So this is the third time they're meeting L.A. Let's start with the positives first. What did they do well in the first 2 matchups against this team? Because the statistics are out there. This is really tight through the 2 contests that they played against each other. What did the Seahawks do well in these 2 meetings with the Rams?
Well, the first game, Sam Darnold had 4 interceptions. So everybody, of course, was talking about Sam Darnold can't play against the Rams. Everyone remembers those games from last year in Minnesota, including the playoffs. And so that was a huge bug that he was able to get off his back with the overtime win, orchestrating that. I think the biggest thing the Seahawks have had going for them is they have clearly been the much better team on special teams. That has given them the edge. Ironically, Jason Myers didn't quite get a 62-yarder over the upright in the first matchup. That was an extremely difficult kick, so nobody's going to be upset that he couldn't make that one. But they've been much better on special teams. Rashid Shaheed, who just had a big kickoff return for a touchdown on Saturday, he had a kick return for a touchdown against the Rams in that overtime win that kind of reignited the football team. So their special teams and opportunistic defense, running game improving. They've ran the football fairly well in both the games in these matchups. The key is going to be, can Sam Darnold eliminate the turnovers like he did this last game? If Sam Darnold is able to play within himself and he's not turning the ball over multiple times, the Seahawks have a really good chance to win, particularly in front of the home crowd. If the Rams coax them into a bunch of picks or they get several sacks, then it heads towards the Rams having the momentum here to get back to the Super Bowl.
Corbin Smith with us again, Sports Illustrated Seahawks beat writer. We appreciate a couple minutes, sir. Thank you very much. Really quickly before we go, we have a picture of you in a very nice bright green blazer. Do you rock that regularly?
I wear bright tux every single game. Whether it's lime green or this last one, I had purple. So you just never know what you're going to get. So
looks good. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks, guys.
At Corbin Smith NFL, you want to give him a follow up there. Yeah, they see, if we had more time, I think one of the things that I would have loved to nerd out about is I don't know if there's a better match at a trade deadline in terms of an acquisition than getting Rashid Shaheed for the Seahawks team. Already a really dominant special teams unit, and that thing is just accelerated with Shaheed out there, given the way that they have been playing here. So looking forward to this one, 2.5 with a total of 47.5. Will be part of the best bets. Potentially. We will have that coming up in a little bit, but this is exactly what I think every one of us wanted here at this point right now when you talk about these two teams meeting. And the Rams, I mean, look, both teams, you can make the argument, could be 2-0 against the other. If the Seahawks can make a kick and the other game goes the way that it did on that Thursday night, or if the Rams can actually stop Rashid Shaheed from getting a punt return for a touchdown and the 2-point conversion, talk about a team that's 2-0 as well. So this should be as tight as it looks on the spread. We'll come back. We'll get the best bets, look ahead to what will be. We'll also look back at the weekend that was. Also get a little bit more on this national championship game before we head out.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We are final between Milwaukee and Atlanta. The Hawks start a game 1 of 22 from beyond the arc. They ultimately cannot get there, fall short 112-110. So turns out if you miss out, what is that, 21 of 22 shot attempts, you probably are going to lose a game. And for them to be able to cut it down to 2 at one point, take a lead late, incredible. Also, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Thunder might be back, folks, very quietly. Up 66-49, 27 seconds left to go. I say they might be back because, yeah, they did lose last time out to the Miami Heat, but that snapped a 5-game winning streak. They're starting to kind of come around. The offense still has been pretty disjointed. And even for this team, this is the standard we hold incredible teams to. They had lost those 2 games, the Suns contest, getting blown out by the Hornets. This is still a team that had won 9 out of 12 games, or excuse me, 11 games that had been playing, of course, at a really high tempo. So we'll see right now if they can continue. Right now they are up 66-49 with less than 30 seconds left to go in the second quarter against the Cavaliers. We're also underway, as we had mentioned, between the Wizards and the Clippers, 30-28 there. Wizards up on top, 10:40 left to go in the second quarter. That might be, if this perseveres in terms of the lead for the Wizards, it's not a big one, might be an opportunity in-game at some point for this contest. We'll see if we can get something a little bit better, but the Clippers are a 4.5-point favorite, total 220.5 as they trail by 2. We are about an hour and 15 minutes away from Knicks Mavericks. We did get some news here. It is official. Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson will play today for the Knicks. That comes down about 10 minutes ago from the injury report. All right, best bets. Let's recap the weekend. Not a lot. NFL is getting tight. We were talking about this on Friday. So 2 plays in the National Football League, both tied to the Broncos. Broncos pick and teasing up the Broncos and the Seahawks down. Didn't even have to worry about the Seahawks in that regard. Both get there. Creighton minus 1.5 in that game against Providence does not as a 1.5-point favorite in college hoops. For today, you've got 2 plays to add. The first of which is I did bet this total over 40.5 in Denver and New England. It looks like maybe we're starting to get up here a bit. There's a 41.5 pretty much across the board right now for the Patriots and the Broncos. I think they're getting this thing over, and even over still 41.5, a playable number right now, only because there's a couple of things here. The first of which is and this is a risk because weather changes, so we'll see if the weather changes, and then ultimately this is going to be a game that flies under, sails under, or falls under. There's better terminology there. Regardless, I think the Broncos, it should be noted again, have really struggled defensively over these last few weeks, and I think that a New England Patriots team, well, we can talk about and debate MVP, still is the most efficient offense in the National Football League. Some of the numbers behind Denver since their bye week here. 21st in opponent expected points added per play before the final 2 weeks of the regular season, where they took on Chris Oladokun and Trey Lance. 23rd in opponent dropback EPA. Of course, we saw against Buffalo this last week, 28 first downs, 66% conversion on third downs for the Bills. They were 10 of 15 there. 449 total yards, nearly 6 yards a play. Generated 12 explosives against this Denver defense. So I do think Denver while they're a solid unit, I don't think they're the worst in the National Football League by any stretch. They have regressed to an extent, and I do believe in the Patriots enough with their offense in good enough conditions, we should say, that they can be able to get this thing and do their part to get it over the total. And the flip side is for New England, they have been a very opportunistic defense, as we saw yesterday against C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. I think a lot of that had to do with C.J. Stroud as well, and I do think that the Patriots are prone to being able to be a little bendy on defense as well. And it goes also into what I think about Stidham and Nix and the difference there. I don't think there's a massive difference, so we'll see if this can come to fruition. Not really loving the injury report for the Broncos wide receivers, so we'll see if that gets better as the time goes along, but thought betting this over, that number was worth playing. For May, by the way, these numbers too, it's going to be really interesting to see if this gets any better for him. But so far in the postseason, sub 60% completion. He's got 5 turnovers, only 4 touchdowns accounted for. He has won these games in large part due to his defense and the way that they have been playing. He's had some pretty good throws in there, but you do wonder if the good version of Drake May, the May that might win MVP, is going to show up at some point. We will see if that's the case, but a little loose with the football through 2 rounds in the postseason for Drake May and the New England Patriots right now. By the way, there was, did you see this over the weekend? Folks, the MVP voting is closed. I hope a lot of you know that, by the way. There was a couple of prediction markets out there that were tweeting out some stuff about, hey, does this improve Drake May's odds to win MVP and Stafford? And, folks, the votes have already been submitted. And I don't know if it's more, well, that's somewhat troubling that a prediction market would actually tweet that out. The other part is that people were wondering whether or not that it was actually closed. So I really do hope you know what you're doing with your money at this point right now. The MVP has ultimately been decided. We just don't know what that decision is because the votes are submitted, and we'll find out in a couple of weeks. Also in the association, adding one, sorry, did not submit this to our wonderful graphics crew, but did lay 2.5 with the Detroit Pistons against the Boston Celtics. Lay the short number. I think the Pistons are deserving of a little bit more respect at home here. Total's 223.5, but that seems pretty short given the injury report for the Pistons. Clean. Peyton Pritchard, questionable to play for the Boston Celtics. I think that this number should be a little bit closer to about 4.5. So let's get the Pistons here at home. One of the better home teams in the association, the second best defensive team in the NBA as well when playing at home. They've been great in Detroit. So we'll give the Pistons a ride and say, hey, you can get this done here, win by 3 or more against the Boston Celtics at home. So for tonight, we went over a bunch in terms of the data for this matchup between Indiana and Miami. And I don't have anything for the game. As we've talked about here on this show, the Hurricanes are a team that Stormy and I both have from a future standpoint, but this is a really difficult place to be in when you're talking about being such a big underdog. Probably wait for an in-game opportunity to get something off if that's going to be the case. Don't know if it will. I think, and we've gone over a lot of the matchups, one of the big matchups, and Stormy brought this up when we talked to her, she's out there right now in Miami, is whether or not Fernando Mendoza is going to be kept clean in this game. And I didn't get to these numbers earlier, but I think they're worth pointing out here. In 3 playoff games for the Miami Hurricanes, they have a defensive pressure rate of 38.8%. They have 8 sacks. Ruben Bain, 21 pressures, 4 sacks, 17 hurries. Akeem Mesidor, 19 pressures, 3 sacks, 16 hurries. For those who are wondering, Mesidor is going to play, not on the injury report, going to wear a brace on that elbow, and he's ready to go. Fernando Mendoza has been living a blessed life for the most part, has not been pressured. He's only been pressured on 29% of his dropbacks so far this year, 51.3% completion when considered pressured, only 7.8 yards per attempt, and his turnover-worthy play rate, as with a lot of quarterbacks, but for him, for doing such a good job throughout the season of cutting down on putting the ball in danger, his turnover-worthy play rate spikes to 3.8%. We have seen this Miami pass rush do a lot to help carry them to this point. Their offense has done a lot too. We've talked about their ability, the Hurricanes, to run the ball here. I do think that you're looking at a position where Miami's probably being undervalued. I shouldn't say probably. They're being undervalued here. It's a 7.5-point spread. Indiana's at the top of the market. The Hurricanes have proven the market wrong time and time again with the way that they've been playing in these games. Their lines of scrimmage are extremely strong. No real notable injuries to report. As we know, again, for those who don't know, you do have a absence in the first half for Xavier Lucas. We'll find out if Damari Brown is going to play for Miami in the secondary as well. And Elijah Lofton, at tight end, is going to be out too. But those are things you can overcome for the most part, especially if Brown does end up playing and Lucas is only out for the first half. You're going to be fine there in that regard. So I think that Miami plus 7.5 is the side. If you're saying just bet this, what do you got? I do think that Carson Beck, despite the fact that this offense has really struggled to generate some of these explosive plays, has been playing well enough, and at the very least will not play at a level that is going to put his team behind the 8 ball, as we saw C.J. Stroud do, for example, against the New England Patriots just this last weekend. He won't, Beck, turn the ball over. He has a turnover-worthy play rate in these playoff games of less than 1%. We know that he is not dynamic as a passer and really doesn't have anything left on the arm. We also know that he's not going to put his team behind the chains, give up a possession, and set Indiana up for some short fields here. PFF has given him a passing grade, though, of 57.3 over the course of these 3 playoff games. It's just not a dynamic passing attack, and that's something you have to have here if you're the Miami Hurricanes. Beck, again, 1 of 11 on passes of 20 or more yards downfield in these 3 playoff games. Went for 57 yards and a touchdown, but with everything else, it has not been explosive. And the way you generate these explosives, if you're Miami, is a lot of yak and yards after catch and getting guys out in space. Indiana's well coached enough to take advantage of that. And I do think that this secondary is good enough for Indiana that they're not going to allow some of these explosives to happen on some of those yards after catch. So ultimately, look, this is how I usually do things. Stormy immediately knew what I was going to do in that Broncos game because I kind of have the same approach for the most part, which is, should we be this high? Should we be here? Should we maybe push back on this? And I think it makes a ton of sense, similar to what we talked about for Ohio State and Miami, if you wanted to come in here and back the underdog, because I do think the Hoosiers are price-wise at the top of the market. But at the end of the day, as we go back to the ultimate comp, they might just be UConn, and they might just be on an absolute tear and just kicking the crap out of every single team in front of them. At the very least, Cignetti acknowledging that to an extent and getting this team right. Really excited for this. It should be a good game, and ultimately a lot of fascination, including the solid favorite to be the first overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, playing once again after a dynamite performance against Oregon. All right, we're all done. Follow the money. Coming up next, Mitch and Paul take you from here. Got a good guest list as they'll get you set for the national championship game, leading you up pretty much to kickoff and more. Don't go anywhere, folks. You need the natty coverage. It's all here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.